right, we're going to go ahead and get started then. So today we have Petros Manassi with us today from MAPT, and he's going to be telling us about mastering the MCAT. Petros, you can go ahead and take it away. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thanks for having me. I'm going to say good morning because it's morning where I am, but good afternoon because it's afternoon where you're all at. I'm thrilled about the next 50 minutes or so to get any questions that you all might have answered. A little bit about my background. I've been involved with the MCAT and with test prep and with tutoring and supplemental education for the last 25 years. So I actually used to work at one of the bigger companies, oversaw the development of MCAT programs and other curriculum in terms of the supplemental educational side of things. So super excited to be here with all of you, the next generation of pre-meds, the next generation of MCAT test takers, to get all your questions answered about the intricacies of this exam. We at med school headquarters, which is part of MAPT, and I'll tell you a little bit about MAPT later on. It's a great free tool that you should all be using. So I'll put a link up so you can all sign up for it later on if you want. It's totally up to you. But the great thing about kind of the MCAT as an exam and really, this whole process, obviously, which you've got great support in your advising team and great support from your school. But the problem with the MCAT is it's a hard exam, and it's an exam that tests lots and lots of different areas in terms of the sciences, but then at the same time, it's mixing it in with critical thinking skills and analytical reasoning skills that, we don't necessarily actively teach ever, but we teach it in classes, but sometimes it gets forgotten or gets overlooked because of the nature of the content that you're being taught. But then the crazy thing about the MCAT is that it takes all those sciences and then it mixes them up. It merges them together. So you aren't tested in an isolated fashion, the same way that you're tested in your undergraduate classes. The good news is it's the most preparable exam that's out there in the sense that there's no kind of hidden information as far as what could be tested and what could not be tested. The AMC who writes the exam is very, very transparent in regards to the information that's available and what is going to actually be tested and how the exam is structured. Same thing goes as far as the practice resources that they have available for free. And then, of course, they have practice resources available that you can pay for. So there's a lot, basically, that happens with the MCAT, a lot of opportunity for you as you're looking through this. So I encourage you to ask the questions that you have. I'll try to answer them in as much as, in real time as possible. If I don't answer your question right away, it's not because I haven't seen it. It's simply because I know that we're going to be talking about something that you might be asking about, in the near future. So I'll make sure to get your questions answered as we go. So I'll try to limit this, my talking to about, 3/4 or so of the time here so that we can make sure to get all your questions answered as we're going through this. So, what is the MCAT? I mean, what is this thing? And depending on where you're at as far as your stage in the process, the MCAT might be coming up this coming year, right? So it might be coming up in 2026. Out of curiosity, you can put it in the chat. Who's testing in 26, or is anyone testing in 2026 and has already registered for the exam? Registration opened a couple weeks ago, so it's all right. So Jamie's testing. Jamie, when are you testing? And put in the date as far as the month, January 10th. All right, so not too far away is what it is. April 11th. That's a little further away. So we got May, April, January, some summer training to test in the summer. So here's the thing. I mean, it's the nice thing about the MCAT is you can kind of choose when you're going to take it, and that's important. And the reason why I say that's important is you don't want to choose to take it when you know you're not going to have time to prepare for this thing. This is an exam that you absolutely must prepare for. The title of today is Mastering the MCAT. There's a lot to master as far as the MCAT. We can't cover that in the time that we have. But one of the things that you can master as far as the MCAT is the necessity to prepare for this exam. This is not an exam that you can just show up one day and go and take, right? This is not an exam that you can cram for the week before you have to take it. This is an exam that does take between 3 to 5 months as far as preparation. Our recommendation is around 300 to 350 total hours. That includes taking practice exams, includes all the things that you're going to be doing to get ready for this exam. So part of this is making sure that you're testing when you're going to be ready, and part of the reason for that is because of the nature of the exam itself. It's about 7.5 hours as far as the time that you're going to be there. There is a lunch break in between section 2 and 3, so yes, you do get some downtime. There are breaks between all the sections, in fact. But if we look at the section titles, you'll start to see what I mean by this integration as far as the sciences. The first section is the chemical physical foundations of biological systems. So you're being tested on general chemistry, on physics, on biochemistry in a biological context. You look at the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, that one also is going to have biochemistry on it. So you're thinking, well, how is physics going to be tested in a biological context? We think about biological systems, very simple one. The circulatory system is a perfect example. It's the one I use all the time because the circulatory system, really, at the end of the day, while a biological system, or what we categorize as a biological system, is really nothing more than fluids and pipes and pumps, right? Your heart is a pump, your veins and arteries and capillaries are the tubing, and then you've got this fluid that's moving through it, which of course is your blood. Now, the biological components that make up the blood, obviously, that is biological, but as far as fluid dynamics, as far as pressures, as far as the chemical composition, the pHs, that's all physical sciences that is integrated into the biological sciences. And on the MCAT, they are going to test you in that integrated fashion. We'll take a look at a question later on today where you'll see what part of this means. But at the same time, there's this kind of necessity for critical thinking and critical reasoning that comes into play. So it's not just about content recall, right? So if you look at the early stages of learning, there's a very kind of classic model. There's some updated models that have come out, since this model, but Bloom's taxonomy of learning tells us that recall and recognition, those are kind of the early stages of learning. I've seen a picture of a table. I can recall that this is a table. If I see a different table from the picture that I had originally seen, I can recognize that it is a table because it shares components with the original picture that I have seen. Those are the early stages of learning. That's not where the MCAT is testing you on. It's testing you on the higher stages of learning, which is where the analytical and application skills come to play. Can you take the content that you know and apply it to a new situation that is being presented to you? And that's, I think, where we have to start thinking about this exam a little differently as far as your preparation, as far as how you're studying for it. Because traditionally, and this is not a ding on undergraduate classes in any way, but the traditional way that we study is through recall and recognition. There are some professors that are out there that fortunately I've had the chance to meet who do it well, where they start to incorporate more and more critical thinking into their exams and into their coursework. But for the most part, we are just trying to learn the material so that we understand the language that they're talking in. The second part about the MCAT, so the structure is there. I'd encourage you to go to the AMC website. You can get more details as far as kind of the ins and outs of what's being tested on it. But the second part about the MCAT, as far as how it fits into the medical school admissions process, is really there are two categories that everything that you submit in a med school application can be divided into. There's your quantitative elements and your qualitative elements. The quantitative elements are your MCAT score and your GPA. The GPA reflects how you've performed in a certain set of classes at a certain time in your life with whatever else is going on in your life, right? That is what the GPA is representing. The MCAT score is the only standardized part of this entire application. And what I mean by standardized is that everybody is being measured against the same metric, right? Everybody is being compared against everyone who is taking this exam. So you're not, it's not based on whether the professor gave easy questions or graded harder or graded easier. It is one standard that everybody is being evaluated on. And so that's part of the reason why med schools value the MCAT score. I can tell you for a fact, if you have a lower MCAT score, that's not going to preclude you from going to med school. If you have a super high MCAT score, that's not going to guarantee that you're going to get into med school. It is one factor in the overall admissions process. The good news is it is a controllable factor for you, right? So in terms of what you're going to be able to kind of do with this exam, it's a very preparable exam, as I've stated, but it is a factor that you can very, very much are in control of. And so you can prepare for this exam. In fact, the expectation is out there that you are doing some kind of preparation, right? Whether it's self-studying or utilizing a tutoring service like ours. Uh, Bottom line is you're doing something as far as this preparation is concerned. You're not going in and taking this exam cold. More importantly, as far as that standard is concerned, the reason why it's out there is not necessarily just for admissions. They want to make sure that you are prepared to start med school. No medical school, and I can assure you, as hard as med school is, no medical school wants to see students that they've admitted not be able to survive, right? They don't want anybody to fail out because of academic reasons, right? That is their responsibility to protect you as a student to make sure that you're actually ready to undertake the curriculum. It's a very, very fast curriculum. It's a very, very intense curriculum. And it's a curriculum that does require you to have these knowledge points as far as your background is concerned. And so that's why the MCAT becomes so important. It's not just because it's a number, it's because it's a number that reflects how well prepared you are to undertake the curriculum. Now, there are obviously other factors that are out there, right? So there might be a student with a lower MCAT score that has a higher GPA, that has, the experience that makes them at school go, this person's going to be able, it's going to be okay. There might also be the student with the high MCAT score who the med school will say, you know what, that's not enough for them to be successful in our program. So it's one of the two quantitative factors. It's the quantitative factor of the two that you can control the most right now. It's not easy to move a GPA. It's not easy to change your MCAT score, but it's much more manageable in the amount of time that you have between now and when you're going to be ultimately testing. The qualitative factors, that's everything else, right? That's all your life experiences. It's all the other things that go into his letters of recommendation. It's interviews when you get to that stage. It's all the other things that fall into that make the decision. So you have full control over this MCAT because it's the standardized part of the process. And as the slide here says, it shows your potential, right? It's an opportunity to show potential. It's not being used as a weed out factor. It is an opportunity for you to show your potential as far as getting in. So then the question is, what's really being assessed here, right? Like, what's the thing that they're really kind of testing you on at the end of the day? And you probably didn't think that you were going to come to, to this session here today, talking about the MCAT, and, this person who you've never met before is going to talk to you about grocery shopping. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to you about grocery shopping. So one of the things that is oftentimes overlooked on the MCAT is that it is, and this is going to sound real weird when I say this, that it's a test, right? And a test is a game. And like anything else in life, if there is a game, you can learn how to play the game, right? So, if you go to like your very basic 52 card deck and you're playing I don't know, euchre or hearts or spades, right? Whatever. I mean, that's very basic. I mean, now obviously games have become much more complex, but at the end of the day, the MCAT is a game. And part of the game is to learn how to play the game and know how the game is played and how to be most successful and strategic about the game. Grocery shopping, very much so, is a game, right? You go to the grocery store and your game is that you're basically on a scavenger hunt to find all the things that you want to bring home with you, right? You want to find the foods that you want to eat, the foods that are going to keep you healthy. You want to make sure that you have kind of the basic supplies, but at the same time, maybe there are a couple treats in there that you're going to end up buying that you probably shouldn't have bought in the first place. There are two ways to go grocery shopping, right? So grocery shopping and grocery stores, this is not me trying to sound anti-grocery chains or anti-grocery stores, but grocery stores, they're also playing a game. They are positioning items throughout the store in a very strategic way to force customers to go through the grocery store, right? There's a reason why the milk and usually the meat products are towards the back of the store, because those are what are considered staple items. So you are more oftentimes than not you are looking to purchase milk. Now, of course, if you don't drink milk or you don't eat meat, you're not going to the back of the store to get those. But there is a strategic reason for it because, they say, oh, I don't know if this is right, but like 70% of the population purchases a gallon of milk every week. So we're going to put the milk at the back of the store. And by putting the milk in the back of the store, they force you to walk to the back of the store, which means you're going to walk through one of the aisles and you're going to see all the other stuff that's around you, and you're going to be inclined to want to purchase those other items, even though your intention was to go and get the milk or get the butter that was at the back of the store. So if you go into the grocery store without a very specific shopping list, you are going to fall for the traps that the grocery store has placed for you, right? At the same time, if you're not specific in what you're going to buy, let's say you just say cereal, I can assure you that they put the most kind of favorable cereal for adults at average adult eye level. They put the most favorable cereals for kids at average kid height level because they want, the little 7 or 8 year old to look at the sugary treat with the nice cartoon character on the box and say, this is the one that I want. And they want you as the adult to look and say, oh, this looks like it's healthy. It has more protein and it's gonna keep me awake so I can study and whatever it might be. So they have strategically positioned all these things. If you go into the grocery store, you're going to be falling into their traps without a shopping list. With a shopping list, you're looking for things very specifically. How does this relate to the MCAT? Very simply, the MCAT is full of distractors. You're walking into a grocery store. You need to go into every single passage. You need to go into every single answer choice with your equivalent of a shopping list. You need to be looking for certain things. You need to be going in with a strategy. You need to go in and say, this is how I'm going to read questions. This is how I'm going to read passages. This is what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be trying to find those key pieces of information. The passages are going to be full of distractors. The answer choices are going to be full of distractors. You need to go into answer choices looking for what you think is right versus trying to find the thing that you think is going to be right. Because they're going to put a distractor in there that's going to sound real good, but I can assure you it's going to be real wrong. So very, very important to kind of keep this mindset. Hopefully that's a good analogy. Hopefully you'll take that with you. This is true for other exams too, not just MCAT. So if you don't like it, let me know. I'll stop using it, but it seems to work. So I'm going to keep using it until somebody tells me otherwise. But that's kind of how we have to be thinking about this. As far as what's really being assessed on the MCAT as an exam. So that was the fun kind of think about it this way. Here's the more kind of pragmatic, how they're actually doing it, what the parallel is to your future careers. They're requiring you to take your prior knowledge, that's the content that you've learned, the practice that you've done, marry that with the new information that's being presented to you in the passages and in the questions, and put the two together with some critical analysis and reasoning to reason out a diagnosis, to reason out an answer choice. This is an exact parallel to what physicians are doing on a daily basis, right? A physician is taking the information that they know from their medical training, from their, previous patients, from their experience. They're taking the new information that the patient is presenting to them, right? Doctor, I have a rash, I have a fever, it showed up after I ate this thing. Doctor turns around and says, okay, I'm looking at the rash, it's a histamine reaction. So based on what you're telling me as far as what you ate and this thing showed up right after you ate it, I'm going to diagnose that you probably are allergic to whatever it is that you just ate, right? And then they might prescribe some medication to alleviate the pain, right? They'll say, here's a cream for you, right? Put this on twice a day, whatever it might be. Or they might just say, stop eating the thing that you ate that gave you the rash. The point is, they're taking these two bits of information that are in blue, the prior knowledge and the new information, to reason out a diagnosis. That's what you're doing on the MCAT. You're taking your prior knowledge, you're taking the information from the test itself, putting the two together to reason out an answer choice. And by reasoning out that answer choice, you're demonstrating not only your knowledge of the information, but your ability to apply that knowledge and the ability to extract information from the passage in order to be able to reach the diagnosis that you're ultimately looking at. Okay, so that's going to be very key for you as far as thinking about how this exam is actually going to be structured and what it's actually doing for you. I thought it would be fun. I mean, we could talk about this all day, but I thought it'd be fun for us to actually look at a problem. And I'm going to walk you through this. I don't want you to look at this from the perspective of, oh, I'm going to try to get this thing right. I want to take this opportunity to really kind of dissect how the critical thinking is going to need to work for you on the MCAT so that you can start to apply this set of kind of skill to your thinking as far as you're preparing for this exam. So we have the sodium, potassium, ATPase that normally exports 3 sodium ions from the cytosol and imports 2 potassium ions per ATP that gets hydrolyzed. Here's the thing. From an analysis perspective, that is not a question. That is a statement of fact, right? They haven't asked us anything. They've just told us information. The good news is you're probably familiar with this if you've taken a biology class and were paying attention, because this is the sodium potassium pump and is the most commonly used example for active transport in introductory biology classes, right? We all have learned at some point that it's 3 sodium ions from the cytosol, right, out, and then brings in 2 potassium ions for every ATP. So we've learned this before. They haven't told us anything new. If you had forgotten this information, they have just reminded you of this information. What that means is, good news, they've told us this information. The bad news is they're not going to reward you. And this is the key thing to remember. They're not going to reward you for knowing that information. That's not where the points are going to be. They can't be there because they literally have told everybody who's taking this question that information. So we say, okay, they gave me that info. I might need to use it, but just in case I don't, the information is there for me. Then they say, a newly discovered marine toxin alters the pump so that at each catalytic cycle exports only 2 sodium while importing 3 potassium ions. So here's the twist, right? This is like it's like a story. You know, here's what was normally happening, but then this new thing happened, right? They have a new discovery. It doesn't matter what the marine toxin is, right? They don't even mention the name of the marine toxin. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter that it is a marine toxin. All that matters is that it's a thing that alters the pump and changes it to 2 sodium ions coming in or going out and 3 potassium ions coming in, right? That's the only thing that matters in this. Then comes the actual question. Which of the following cellular changes is most consistent with the exposure to this toxin? And then they give you the answer choices, right? They say, here are the answer choices. And they're these very, very long statements. Don't read through these, right? Do not read through these right now. That's not the point, right? They're these very, very long statements. So we have to do a little bit of simplification. We have to do a little bit of critical thinking. And we have to do a little bit of knowledge, right? Extraction, the stuff that we are aware of outside of what they've already told us. So these very long answer choices are very common on the MCAT, right? This is a very, very common technique. But if you look a little bit more closely at these answer choices, you'll start to realize something, and that is that there is a pattern, right? If you look at the first word of each of the answer choices, it's either hyperpolarization or depolarization of the resting membrane potential, right? Those first words are the same except for the words hyperpolarization or depolarization. And then it's the pattern as far as the answer choices is it's either says decreased or increased. They're all intracellular, and then it's the type of concentration. So is it the sodium concentration or is it the potassium concentration? So here's really kind of where I'm going with this. You have these kind of differences that are important. The of the resting membrane potential with a is the same for all 4 answer choices. So we can get rid of that, right? We've all of a sudden taken these long sentences and made them even shorter, right? We've simplified this. If there is not hyperpolarization occurring, then A and C cannot be the answers. If there's not depolarization occurring, B and D cannot be the answers. So if we're gonna do the work to know how we get to the answer, but that's going to be the key for us. We have decreased and increased, and we have sodium and potassium as far as the concentrations. They're all intracellular, so we can get rid of those words as well. So all of a sudden, your very long words, as far as very long answer choices with lots of words, have now become four words: hyperpolarization or depolarization, increased or decreased, sodium or potassium, and then its concentration. Right? We don't even need the word concentration, but we'll leave it in there for good measure. Okay? So this is how we need to be looking at these answer choices. Now, that's just the answer choice looking part. Let's look at the actual science. Here's what's normally happening, right? Normally, we have 3 sodium that are going out. We have 2 potassium that are coming in. So if 3 positives are going out, 2 positives are coming in, there's a net movement outside of the cell of +1. So we are polarizing, right, on the outside, right? That's where the polarization, and if you don't remember what polarization is, that's something to review. And this is how you can also do it as far as you're studying, as you're going through questions, you identify topics that you need to review. You can go back to those questions, or go back to those topic areas that you need to go back to. So we have a movement of +1 to the outside itself in a normal situation. With the toxin, everything changes, right? Now it's 2 sodium out, 3 potassium in. So it's a +1 to the inside of the cell. So the key that has occurred now, and this is where we have to kind of think about this from the perspective of, the bigger picture of what they're really asking us, is they're asking us what has changed. So if this is how we normally would have been polarized, now all of a sudden, as far as that polarization is concerned, that was originally outside of the cell, now things aren't so great anymore, right? We are depolarized relative to what we started with, right? We normally would have been at +1. When we go down, that is a depolarization. So now we're at 0 as far as outside of the cell. So that's depolarization. And then at the same time, if we look at our concentrations as far as our sodium and our potassium are concerned, we've increased our potassium on the inside of the cell, and we've decreased our sodium on the outside of the cell. So this is the problem, right? This is the problem, is we have depolarization with the increase as far as the sodium concentration, because if we go back over here, the increase of the sodium concentration is going to be on the inside, because we only removed, right? We took out the relatively speaking, we don't, we're not moving in the right direction, right? We're supposed to be, it's supposed to have been this. We were supposed to remove 3, but we only removed 2. So we increased it on the inside. We increased the sodium concentration on the inside. So the only answer choice that can work is going to be answer choice B, and that's the one that you choose because you have an increased sodium concentration on the inside of the cell because you didn't remove as much of it to begin with, right? Not as much was extracted. You were supposed to take out 3, you only took out 2. This question is a standalone question. There's no passage that's related to it. The MCAT also has these very long passages. We don't have time for a passage in a session like this. But the problem is that you run into these situations where you have to do all this thinking, and you have to do all this thinking in a minute's worth of time. So this is where the practice comes into play, right? This is where it's so important to start thinking about building out an actual, practice schedule and study schedule, and having it be very, very defined and very, very specific as far as your preparation is concerned. So here's how your MCAT prep should progress as far as your studying is concerned, as far as, kind of where you're at today and where you're going to be at tomorrow. The problem that I hear lots and lots of students share with me that have studied for the MCAT on their own, which is totally fine. It's totally doable, but let me give you a little bit of guidance on how to do this well. Is they say, I've done all my content review. And I'm like, great. What does that mean? That you've done all your content review. And what that usually means is they've gone through an Anki deck, right? They've gone through some kind of set of review books from somewhere, and they haven't necessarily done any type of practice to make sure they're retaining the knowledge. Content is very important for the MCAT. You must know your content. Think of it like this. You don't want your doctor not knowing, right, what all the different ailments are that their specialty or their practice is supposed to be treating you for, right? You want that content knowledge, or you need that content knowledge. But content review and content knowledge alone is only going to be able to get you so far on the MCAT. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that this is a test of critical thinking skills and critical reasoning skills coupled with content. The content is merely the language that the MCAT is in, right? It's yes, it's in English, but it is the science language that the MCAT is in fact in. So when you think about your progression for your MCAT preparation, if we look at the left-hand side, that's day one. If we look at the right-hand side, that's test day. So you're always going to be doing something as you're studying for the MCAT. But you cannot be doing the same thing week after week after week. Your preparation is going to evolve. It has to evolve. And I say this to every student I speak to, you should always feel challenged, right? If your MCAT prep feels easy, that means you're not doing something right. Because the only way for your scores to improve is for you to get better at the things that you're not good at. And I know that that doesn't sound very appealing, right? We like, as human beings, we like to do things that we're good at. We gravitate towards them. We choose hobbies, we choose majors, we choose careers based on things that we are good at, that we enjoy doing. And we do the things that we're good at more because it gives us positive reinforcement and it makes us feel good about ourselves. That's normal. That's normal human behavior. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem with the MCAT is if you keep doing that, you should not expect your score to improve. Because if there are only so many points that can come from one given section, or from one given topic area, I should say. So if you're really good at thermodynamics, you're really good at thermodynamics. You can't get any better at thermodynamics, which means you can't get any more points out of thermodynamics. So you have to go work and force yourself to do something else. Okay, that's the only way that this whole system works. So earlier on in your preparation, you're going to be doing more content review, and you're going to need to be building your critical thinking skills, right? That's the time for the development. But as you progress, you're going to start to taper off the amount of time that you are spending with content review and critical thinking skills development, and start to slowly incorporate practice questions. And then you maybe do some practice passages, and then you do some practice sections, and then you do some full-length exams. It's a mistake to be trying to do full-length exams from day one, right? That's not the right thing, because you have to slowly train yourself to start to build those endurance skills. So it's a progression over time. So over time, the dark blue becomes less of a percentage of your time, and the light blue becomes more and more a percentage of your time. Now, this is flexible depending on when you're starting, when you're ending, right? So I'm not saying it has to be start today and end on April 15th or whatever, test date it is you choose. Whenever it is that you have started to whenever it is that you're testing, this can be, adjusted, but the general progression, that doesn't change, right? That does not change. The total area in this box is about 300 to 350 hours. So just kind of think of it like that. And this is not precise, right? This is a representation. Generally speaking, there are going to be some days you're going to do a little more content. There may be some days that you're going to do a little less content, fine. But in general, if as you're getting closer and closer to test day, you're still finding that a lot of your time is being occupied with content review, then you've done something wrong, is what it comes down to, right? So that's not a ding on you. That's just the reality, right? Is that you have to be kind of cognizant of the fact that this evolution needs to be happening as you're kind of building up to the next stage as far as your preparation itself is concerned. I'll pause there because I saw a question here. So psych soc, I'm assuming is the one that's what you mean by the PS, which is you're using the abbreviation right. Seems to be more content heavy and not much practice out there as compared to other sections. Is it fair to focus more on content for that section? Here's the thing about the psych social section. So I've been doing this for a long time. The reason I say that is I was around when they changed the MCAT and they incorporated the psych social section. And the reason why they incorporated the psych social section was very, very simple. They wanted students to be more prepared with a background in the behavioral sciences going into med school because they found that med students really had no background just as far as like sociology and cultural awareness and recognizing that different ways of learning and just all those things, right? All the things that get incorporated into psychology and into sociology, into the behavioral sciences. They wanted to kind of create the section to get students to be more prepared. So coming in, they could dive in a little earlier. A lot of this was also reflected on the fact that more and more med schools had patient interactions earlier in med school than historically had been so. So they came up with this very long answer to a very, very good question. They came up with this grand plan for the psych soc section, which was going to, assess all these things and get critical thinking involved, et cetera, et cetera. And in the process of developing it, I think they realized that there were so many different areas as far as psych and soc, and that it was hard to write those assessments. So slowly over time, yes, it became much more so. Can you identify which theory this is, or can you identify, what the topic is that's here? So yes, psych soc does appear to be a little bit more content heavy, namely because the the content subjects or the topics in psychology and sociology, there are far more of them, but they're not as in depth. And let me explain what I mean by that. Um, this isn't a ding on psychology or sociology, it's just reality. If I say oxidative phosphorylation, that's one topic that, I mean, there's so much to oxidative phosphorylation, right? The electron transport chain has, three different steps, just, I mean, right there, right? I mean, we have so many different things just in that one little area. And there's so much that has to happen in order for us to be able to make one little ATP. PsychSoc doesn't have that crazy depth, and so there's a larger scattering of topics, and so as a result of that, there is a little bit more content that comes into play. So yes, you do need to know the theories. Yes, you do need to know the content. I wouldn't say that you should be focusing more on content for that section. You're still going to be focusing on content, across the sections. There just may be a larger. Let me see if I get this right or say this correctly. There's a larger variety of content topics in Psych Soc that you will have to cover. So that might take you more time, is what it comes down to. So hopefully that answered your question and gave you some background into how this all came to be, as it were. Other questions that are out there. There are 25 of you here. I'm sure there's at least one more question that's out there. So type them in. I'd love to hear what's on your mind, as it were. As you do that, I'll give you this actually. So this is I will tell you, Kelsey. So so I'll tell you in a second. As far as the courses themselves to take, is there. Give me 1 second. I will give you the list that you should be taking as far as the classes are concerned. But I will actually defer to you as far as like the course numbers at UCF for sure. The zone. So getting into the right zone. This is referring back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of feeling challenged. So this is actually one of the topics on the MCAT. So this applies to you and applies to you in both ways. It's called the zone of proximal development. The idea behind the zone of proximal development really is kind of one of the key factors you should be looking at when preparing for this test and for really any standardized exam that you might be taking in the future. The zone of proximal development, the theory essentially is that there's a person's actual development level. So this is what a person can do without any help. So I'm able to read the books, I'm able to do the math, I'm able to understand the things, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's the potential that somebody has, which is what the person can achieve with the guidance of somebody who's more experienced, right? This is when you get the professor involved, you get the mentor involved, you get the lab TA involved, you get a tutor involved, right? This is the potential development that a person can be ultimately achieving. The zone of proximal development, that's the region that falls in between. And this is where you actually have the most, I mean, as I put in the slides, but this is where the most kind of efficient, effective learning occurs. It's like going to the gym. If haven't lifted weights and somebody gives you, and I don't go to the gym, so I don't know why I keep using this analogy, but I'll use the analogy. Somebody gives you, I don't know, 200 pounds to lift and you never lift weights, you're not going to be able to lift 200 pounds and you're going to feel not great about yourself and you're not going to want to go to the gym again, right? You're going to be discouraged. But if I give you a 5 pound weight and I say, lift this, and you lift it and it feels a little bit hard, right? It's not, doesn't feel great, but you're like, oh, I can do this. I feel challenged enough, but I'm still able to accomplish something. So I feel good about myself and I'm going to want to do it again. And then you practice doing that. And then it's okay. Now I'm going to lift the 10 pound weight. And now I'm going to lift the 15 pound weight. And this is how learning ultimately happens. So finding that zone of proximal development, right? That level that is not so easy that you don't feel challenged, but not so challenging that you get discouraged. That's where you're going to actually see the biggest improvements as far as score. And then once those become easy, then the zone of proximal development gets harder, right? It goes up and up and up. And that's where you start to see your full length or your scores increasing and your performance increasing at the end of the day. Kelsey, as far as the courses, so you have to take, so as far as the MCAT itself is concerned, you need to have biology, so introductory biology, mainly cellular systems and organ systems. That's the intro bio that you're going to need. You need general chemistry, you need organic chemistry, you need upper division biochemistry. So I'm not referring to, the chapter or two of biochemistry that would happen in a general bio course. I'm talking about an upper division biochemistry course. So you need that. So that's your chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry sequence, your biology. You need physics. So you need physics 1, so you need mechanics, you need electrostatics, which is usually in physics 2, you need optics, right? So you need the physics sequence for certain. A lot of students make the mistake of not having yet taken the second half of physics and studying for the MCAT, or not having taken biochemistry and studying for the MCAT. That's not generally recommended. Some depend, but this is where I think the school's curriculum becomes part of the conversation, depending on where stuff is ultimately covered at the end of the day. There's definitely some lower yield stuff in physics too that you don't need to worry about for the MCAT as much, right? Like alpha and beta decay is one that pops to mind. If you haven't gotten alpha beta decay, you can still take the MCAT. There probably be maybe at most one question about it on the exam. So it's not overly detrimental if you haven't done it. So you got your physics sequence, your chemistry biochem sequence, your bio sequence. And then for the psych soc, this is where it gets a little bit weird. At some schools, the topics that are on psych soc on the MCAT, you'd have to take 5 or 6 different classes because like a couple weeks in each class would cover the topics, right? So, from that perspective, that's not worth anyone's time. It's not worth your money in terms of the tuition you're paying for those classes. So some of the psych soc can be learned on your own. Definitely take psych 1, right? Or like intro psych. That's going to be, it's going to be a good solid foundation, probably more than you need to know. A general sociology course would work. But I would say this is where, and Kelsey, if you want, I can point you to some resources. There's, there used to be a mapping tool, at least. I'm sure we can find something that's still out there. That the maps kind of what's the topics on the MCAT to, your courses, or your, the curriculum at a given school. There was one in the early days, like 5, 6 years ago now, maybe more than that. There was an advisor who was telling their students to minor in sociology. So they got all the coursework that was going to be on the MCAT, and it was like, why, why? That doesn't make sense. Like, no one needs a minor in sociology if they don't want to minor in sociology, right? If you want to, you want to. So hopefully that helps, as it were. Um, so as far as you do, yeah. So as far as Orgo 2 is concerned, Hanan, you do need Orgo 2. Here's the thing about organic chemistry. I love organic chemistry. Don't get me wrong. I did not love organic chemistry before, but I do love organic chemistry. Um, Organic chemistry on the MCAT is not necessarily explicitly tested as much as the other sciences are. But the organic chemistry is the foundation for the biochem. So all those reactions that you're learning in OChem 2, those are all going to show up in biochemistry. So that's going to be ultimately needed. As far as an order to approach the AMC material, definitely the question banks, then the sections, then the full lengths. That's kind of the general progression that you want to go in. You don't want to go full lengths and then go back to questions per se. So that would be the kind of the key, as it were, from that side of it. The and whatever content review, works for you, works for you. A lot of people like Anki, a lot of people like getting some kind of review books, right? ChatGPT these days is getting better, scarily enough, but I would still point you towards Wikipedia as far as the science content itself is concerned. I've played around with ChatGPT on a couple things, and it definitely gets things wrong more often than it gets things right. So it's I would be cautious about it, as it were. I mentioned this at the beginning. I'll mention it now, so get a chance for everybody to do this. If you're interested, there's like literally no obligation to anything. So part of what my organization has in our suite of products and resources available to pre-meds, our ultimate goal at the end of the day is to help pre-meds and democratize the medical admissions process as much as possible and make information readily available. So we have a program called Mapped, which is effectively, for lack of a better term, I'll be probably punished for saying it this way, but for lack of a better term, it's like a really, really awesome journal in terms of keeping track of all the things that you've been doing through your undergraduate career. So your classes, your clinical hours, your volunteer experience, you can put your grades in there. It's really just a nice place to have a dashboard of everything that you're doing, so that when it does come time to apply to med school and you're going to, go talk to Kelsey and the team at the advising office, and you're going to start putting things together in terms of the application, you can say, here's everything that I've been doing, right? And then start working on kind of packaging that all up and putting it together. So it's totally free. I'd encourage you to look at it, sign up for it. But more importantly, if you sign up for it, definitely be using it, because that's really the way that, the way to look at things from that perspective. I will also say that for everyone here, as far as, and Alexandra, this answers your question too. Whether you're new to the MCAT, whether you've been studying for the MCAT, I think the key really comes down to reviewing content, developing critical thinking skills, and building out a solid schedule and getting help, right? Getting help when you need help, because this isn't something, you don't need to be recreating the wheel, is what it comes down to, right? There's no point in recreating the wheel at all. Other things that we have at med school headquarters that I would encourage you to either attend live or watch the recordings. We do MCAT office hours every Tuesday. So if you want to come to that, please do. They're completely free. Usually it's a little bit of open Q&A, and then I do a problem or so. So we do that every week for the most part on Tuesdays. It's at 4 o'clock Eastern. I can send over the information to be shared with all of you. The only time we don't do it is if there's a holiday, or like we didn't do it yesterday, or what's today? Thursday. We didn't do it 2 days ago because until yesterday we were at the AMC conference, so we couldn't do it. So that's with me and Dr. Gray. So something to chime into. We have lots and lots of events. for free. It's called so premedevents.com is the place to go for those. We don't have any scheduled. We just did a whole bunch of them, but we're going to schedule some more coming up. And then at the same time, as far as, for those of you kind of in the MCAT, if you're in the space that you're looking, that you're taking the MCAT soon, um, we do offer tutoring services as well. So if that's something that you're looking for, that's something that's available. I have a team of about 16 faculty who are all awesome, who are delivering the tutoring that I hired. Been doing this for a long time, so we've got good people, is what it comes down to, and they are a pretty awesome bunch. So if you're looking for a tutor, need some help, you can schedule some time there for a consult. But I will open it up to questions and see what oh, it's been deactivated? Oh. Oh, I know why. I know why. So let me just go to this link. Just go to that. Let's go to that link for now. That'll get you to the same place is what I'll do. I know why it got deactivated. Because I think I used something that I thought they were making me a QR code. And then I think I got the email this morning that was like, your free trial is over. I'm like, what do you mean free trial? I didn't sign up for a free trial. So um I'll change that.
Can I jump in with another question? Sorry.
You can.
Have my advisor hat on, I'm thinking.
You can put it on, yeah.
So I know there's like the obvious courses that students are gonna need to take in order to feel prepared for this. Are there any additional courses that maybe aren't required for medical school or aren't prereqs for MCAT necessarily, but that you think would be beneficial for students to take?
I mean, there's the rumors out there that you should take microbiome and anatomy and physiology. You don't need to take those, right? Like you should take them if you're interested in them, right?
Mhm.
Nobody should be taking anatomy because they want to become a doctor and they think that by taking anatomy that'll make your application better, right? Like take it if you're genuinely interested in it. The answer that I will give to that question is to take classes that you genuinely are interested in, that you'll never have the opportunity to learn those things again in the future because you won't have the opportunity as far as being at an undergraduate institution that, I mean, especially UCF has, right? There's so many different classes that you could take. Take stuff that you enjoy, that you will learn something, that will expand your mind, because whatever it is that you're doing, whatever class the subject matter is, the critical analysis is always there, right? Regardless of whether you're taking a philosophy class or you're taking a writing class or you're taking I don't know, Russian history of literature, right? I mean, whatever it might be, right? Slavic languages, Eastern language, whatever it might be, it's going to require, it's going to require the critical thinking skills regardless. So take stuff that you enjoy is really, I think that's my answer in that regards. In terms of, the MCAT, everything can be learned outside of a class. Here's the weird thing. You're taking the coursework to learn the material for the MCAT. I mean, most med schools don't actually require the biochemistry coursework or the psychology coursework, right? Like they don't actually require it. You just need to learn the material. Content's free these days, so you don't even have. I mean, you don't have to go to class, and you can learn. I shouldn't say that, right? But like everybody go to class. That's the best thing you can do. But right, but I mean, you can learn the material in other ways. The coursework that you take is being taken to fulfill the prerequisite coursework that the medical schools have listed on their website and in the MSAR. And learn the material for the MCAT. But in theory, you don't have to take any of the coursework and you could go take the MCAT, right? Like there's nothing on the MCAT that says, have you completed biochem? No, I haven't. No, you can't register for the exam. You could go register for the exam. So that's how I would position kind of that thought process. But anything that's going to allow you to develop those critical thinking skills is going to be beneficial in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you. That's kind of what we, tell students, but I just wanted to make sure that we were mirroring, the experts in the field. So
yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, you got it. I mean, there was a professor at one school who was telling every pre-med they had to take microbiology. And I questioned her. I said, "What? Why?" She was the microbiome professor, right? She wanted all this. She wanted everybody in her class. Which is fine, right? Like no problem. But it's like that. There's no microbiome in the MCAT. Like you will learn it there later. The anatomy that's the big one that everyone thinks. Oh, I'm going to become a doctor. I should go take an anatomy course. Med schools are going to teach you anatomy very, very differently and very intensively in a good way. So, yeah, that's not a thing that needs to happen for sure.
We've had a few questions as well.
Yeah,
So I think you might have touched on this one already, but in case you want to go into it further, a student was asking, is there a good way to approach the AMC material in order? Like if they did
I answered that on camera. Yeah, I took
you've
care of
gotten
that
that,
one. Yeah,
okay?
I got it. Yep.
And then we also had a student asking if somebody is completely new to MCAT prep, what would the very first step be in
I,
terms of studying?
I covered that one as well. So
Oh,
that was
okay.
yeah, that was building out the resources and the study material and all that stuff. So I think I tried
Yeah,
to get as
I
much
think
as
you
I
may have. I
could.
just wanted to review them just
Yeah,
to
yeah, no, I
see.
appreciate that.
And then there was also, I don't know if you've, if there's a chapter that a student feels weak on, should they reread a chapter quickly to get a big picture and then do practice problems?
No, no. If you've already read the chapter, here's the mistake. So if you've already read the chapter, then you've read the chapter. So don't go read the chapter again. Go do some practice problems with it, see how you've performed, and then use your performance, use your outputs to dictate what you need to go do again. Because otherwise, you're just going to fall into the rabbit hole of reading chapters over and over and over and over again. So use your performance to figure out what it is that you need to go back and review. So
Thank you. And then what study prep resource do you recommend the most when students asking like UWorld?
UWorld is a question bank, so that is something that lots of students use. The one that I recommend, the only one that I formally recommend, is the material from the AMC, because they're the people who write the exam and have that out there. So, I mean, I will say this. We are here at Med School headquarters. We will be launching a course this winter. So we will be developing questions and resources. That's why I'm here. But even when we have our own, I'm going to recommend the AMC material, right? Like that's the it's I mean that's my point, right? Like it's the AMC material will always be the AMC material, be the material from the actual. So as good as we can get them to be, I'm going to recommend the AMC material. So you do have to pay for some of it, right? Like that's the it's not there is some that's free, but there is some that is not free. I'm not, endorsed or paid for like by the AMC. They haven't paid me or like I'm not saying this, to give them, but yes, you will have to pay for the resources. Um, but it's retired questions from the actual MCAT. You literally cannot get any more real than that without going and taking the actual MCAT. So that's the that's the that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think
You're
you've covered most of every student's question. Students, if there's any other questions that you have, feel free to ask.
Yeah. And then if you want to reach out to us, I put it in the chat, but I'll put it again just so that this is our email address. Feel free to reach out to there. And then Kelsey, if you don't mind, and Priya, if you don't mind, I'll send you some links that you can post or share with students as far as like the events they have coming up and all that stuff, so they can come and get more free, great information as they're prepping and getting ready.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great. Good luck to everybody and have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you again.
You're very welcome. Bye.